You sure? Hello, everyone. My name is Sierra Cattentit, and thank you guys so much for being with us today. Allison Horn is going to be presenting how to cultivate a virtual connection. But before we get started, I want to let you guys know that this training is going to be recorded and will be made available to you next week in our mentor update email. So please be on the lookout for that. Also included in that email will also be a resource sheet listing all the activities that we're going to share with you today and those websites so you guys can utilize those. If you have any questions or comments throughout the training, please send them our way. We'd love to answer any of your questions. If you haven't already opened the Q&A chat box, you can find that on the top right of your window. There should be two little talk bubbles with a question mark in one of them. Lydia Lackey-Noble is our moderator today in our chat box, so she will be answering questions. Lydia, you want to say hey?
Hello.
Yes, so you guys are just going to be hearing her voice, but she will be present with us throughout the training as we ask a couple questions between each section, as well as at the end of the training, we will have the opportunity to have a Q&A. So if any of your questions get overlooked throughout the training, don't fret, because we will get those answered. Alrighty, so without further ado, I am going to let Allison kick us off here.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I know this past year has been filled with adjustments and new ways of doing things, and so we wanted to have this training to help you all navigate conversations with our kids through video call. I know that this has been an adjustment for us, and it's definitely been one for them. So today we'll start with meeting our team as we have some new faces. We have mentoring both here in West Tennessee and in Middle Tennessee. For those of us joining from the West Tennessee, these faces might be familiar to you. We have Miss Lydia, who you guys have already heard from today. She has been with mentoring for 3.5 years and has mentored 2 youth through our program. She has definitely had her fair share of video calls this year, so if you guys ever need any pointers, she's probably a great person to go to. And then Miss Deja, she is new to our team. Well, I say new, but really she's been here about a year now, and so she has been with us through all of virtual, and I think that is where the primary amount of her training has been this year, has been learning virtual mentoring. And then Miss Sierra has been with us the longest time. She's been here, I believe, 6 years or 7, and has mentored multiple kids through our program. She has led most of our training, so I'm sure if you are returning to us, you have met her or heard her voice before. And then I'm Allison. I've been with mentoring for 3.5 years, and I have mentored 4 kids. I mentored prior to COVID, and so I did a lot of in-person. But if you guys ever need help thinking of ways to engage with your kids, please feel free to ask me. I'm here to help. And then Miss Laney, she is also one of the newer additions to our group. She's been with us for about a year now as well. She's done all of her trainings and interviews and matches and video calls this past year. And so she is also very well versed in this world of virtual. Us joining from Middle Tennessee, you know Miss Demetris. She has been with YV, oh my goodness, I think over 7 years now, and she has been with mentoring that entire time. I'm sure, and she you guys have maybe worked with her if one of your youth has moved from West Tennessee to our Middle Tennessee group homes, or vice versa, if you're from Middle Tennessee and your youth has moved to the Memphis area, you've maybe worked with Demetrius and our West Tennessee team. That has been one of the more beautiful things that have come out of COVID, is that we've gotten to continue these relationships after the kids have left West Tennessee, which is something we weren't able to do pre-COVID. So that has been one of the cooler things that has come out of this past year. And then our newest co-worker or supervisor, I'm sorry, to the team, she has just joined us this month. She has been with YV, I think, 13 years. She's been here in our development team, and so she just came to us, and she is actually starting to mentor. She just did her training this past week, and so she is going to be mentoring one of our girls at the Rose Center. This is our unofficial mascot. He's not been told that he is now the mascot of mentoring, but this is her puppy Brody, and he is a doll. And as you all know, we are here for anything that you guys might need. If you have any questions, any of these people that are in this group are more than willing to help you guys out. So this past year, again, has been just like a crash course in all things virtual and how things work, and there's been a lot of trial and error. And as we've adjusted to this, we've kind of learned the ins and outs of what works best. For some people, virtual calls have been an adjustment as far as, you know, learning how to use Teams. I know in the beginning we were learning how to use Zoom. So the biggest thing is just having a strong internet connection, and that's true for Teams, for Zoom, and for FaceTime. If you're using cellular data, it's just not always as dependable. So I know sometimes we might need to be making a call from your car during your lunch break or something like that, but just making sure that you have a strong Wi-Fi connection, because sometimes it can be hard to hear, or the pictures are pixelated and so we can't really see you, which is where the good lighting and having your face in the screen is important. We obviously want to see your beautiful face in these calls. Our kids want to see your face, and it's so much easier, I think, to have these conversations virtually, because we're able to tell your body language and tone of voice and how things are coming off, whereas with phone or letter writing or anything like that, it's a little bit more limited in understanding where you're coming from. And also, you know, still trying to get in that face-to-face time together as we're going through mentoring, because that is such a huge piece of our program. And it's why in our match day checklist, we say we don't really want the phone out, because we want that time where you guys are getting to interact. And so making sure your face and that we're able to see you is really important in helping that kid getting to know you. Okay, so limiting distractions. I know for me, I have a cat who is very attentive. He definitely requires a lot of my attention, and he has been known to interrupt my video calls with my friends with his meowing and needing to be the center of attention. So when thinking through these video calls and how to maximize your time, it's important to find a quiet space around you in your home, if you have an office, or maybe while other people in your house are out of the home. Just being mindful of the noise around you, because it can be distracting and it can also be hard to hear. In our foster homes and biological homes, this might be a little bit more difficult for our kids, for them to be able to find that quiet space. They might be using the foster parent's cell phone, and in that case, they will have to be around the parent so that they're able to monitor the phone call. Another thing important to consider when having your video call is that it needs to be in a space where other people who have not been screened through the mentoring program aren't able to identify your child. We still have to be mindful of HIPAA and its regulations. We cannot have our children identified as youth villages, mentees. And so just being mindful of who's around you and who is gaining information from that call, because if that child is confiding in you and telling you something personal, that doesn't need to be shared with everyone. And the same with our youth. We don't want them to be in a situation where you're maybe telling them something that you wouldn't want the entire group home to know. which is why we try to pull them aside into a more private area when we are doing these calls. As I was talking about my cat and how distracting he can be, I'm sure you have a pet too who just really loves to be next to you all of the time, which is great. It might be a great opportunity for your youth to meet your animal. At the same time, if it's time for them to maybe go have their dinner or something, maybe feeding them before the call. But just making sure that they are not needing your full and undivided attention during that time, just because we want your Minty to have that 30 minutes of undivided attention with you. And then again, keeping in mind the space that you're in while you're with your Minty, not having any like alcohol or tobacco or any kind of lewd images, obviously weapons, anything in that space that might be considered inappropriate, we would not want our youth to see. So if you have something suggestive hanging on your wall, maybe choosing a different wall would be a good option at that point. And then, have any of you had any virtual visits? And if so, how do you guys stay focused? I know that we've all had a lot of practice with this at this point, and so do you schedule, a 30-minute section of time during your calls so that you can then get up and walk around or give your eyes a rest? Or do you have different ways of maybe keeping your hands busy? What has worked for you all? Okay, so we are going to discuss communication and what that looks like for our kids and for you guys as you are talking on your video calls. So what are ways that we can maximize conversation? Because I know sometimes it can be maybe a little bit difficult to think of what to talk about, and 30 minutes can sound like a long time depending on how well you guys know each other. So we want to think about quality versus quantity, because we do know that this can be awkward. It can be new, especially if this child has maybe never had a mentor before. Now they're trying to get to know somebody through a method that might be unfamiliar to them. So it's best to come into these visits with a plan. And that could be having some questions planned together, and what does that look like for you guys? What are some things that you guys could talk about that maybe you would like them to know about yourself, or that you could share with them? You can maybe come up with some games to play as just kind of a backup to kind of ease in that transition. Some of our kids are really well at meeting people they don't know. They can walk into a match meeting not knowing myself and not knowing the mentor, and they're very outgoing and vivacious, and those conversations may become a little bit easier. But for some of our kids, they can be really shy and have a difficult time opening up, or maybe even just knowing what to talk about. They maybe don't know how to have a conversation with an adult they don't know. And so again, just kind of thinking through, what's your goal of this meeting? Is it talking about school? Is it talking about something going on in their life, or maybe just getting to know one another? Maybe come planned with like an icebreaker. So we have if that is something that you're running into where you're like, I don't really know how to pass the time to make this time constructive and productive, that's a conversation that we can definitely have together. So again, thinking through these video calls, some of our kids are doing multiple video calls a day, and it can take a lot of energy and effort to pay attention. They might be fidgeting a lot, and that's okay. I think that's natural. But just thinking through and considering the amount of time that they're trying to focus. So think about the age of the youth that you're with, how old they are, and how that might impact their ability to pay attention to you. So the younger they are, the shorter amount of time that it's going to be that they're going to be able to sit there, or they might be fidgeting and moving around or paying attention to all the things going around them in that room. I know in one of the rooms that I visit in, they have a lot of the snacks that they keep in for the group home, and I have kids who want to like look around at all the fun snacks that they might be having in the future. And so we definitely try to help rein that in when we're together, but just being mindful that it can be a little bit difficult sometimes for them to keep that attention span. Again, going back to why it's important to maybe have some ideas in place of what you want to accomplish, if that's a game, if that's a certain kind of conversation, and we're about to go through some ideas to maximize that time. So when thinking about meaningful conversations, this means being intentional with your statements and questions, so making sure to ask those open-ended questions. I know for some questions it takes, a yes or a no answer, and just kind of thinking through what are better questions that you could be asking that could open up to more conversation. So, you could ask, what did you learn in school today? I know that was always a hard question for me to answer, but maybe they did learn something in school, or maybe, what's something you did today, and was it your favorite thing you did today, or was there something you like to do more? But just thinking of how you can get them to talk. I know for me, I ran into this during a road trip with friends, and we ended up Googling 101 questions like you didn't think of asking somebody, and it was like, what's your favorite donut, or what's a memory you have from kindergarten? But just like oddly specific questions, and we can email that to you if you're interested, because I know sometimes I don't feel that creative with my questioning and how to engage people. So that's one thing you could consider, but just making sure that the questions that you're asking don't end with a simple yes or no. That's something that I think would definitely help the conversation. Okay, so leading the relationship. I think we all have a lot more practice with video calls and facilitating video calls than our kids do. So this might be new for them. Especially if they don't know you, they don't know how to engage with you, as I've said. And so just knowing that it's going to take some time. It always kind of takes time when you start a new relationship, but I think it definitely takes a little bit more time when you're doing it virtually. So just being patient and consistent. I think consistency is a huge piece of this. Just knowing that you're showing your face, you're giving it time, and that they can count on you to continue to try, even if it doesn't go as they thought it would. I know that I sometimes overthink what I did or how I behaved, or if they liked this or if they didn't like this, and I think sometimes that's what our kids go through too. And so as long as you continue to show up and continue to put forth effort, I think that will resonate with them. It also means that sometimes our kids aren't going to call you, and we tell them that that's okay. We tell them, if there's somebody else you want to call, I think that's great. If you have a family member or a DCS worker or a former foster parent that's important for you to connect with, we want you to do that. We don't ask our kids to call you. That is fully up to them, because they might have only one other method of communicating with that sibling, and it might only be on their phone call days. And so if you're not hearing from your youth because they're not calling you, that isn't a good test for like whether or not they're interested in having a relationship with you. They are probably very interested in having a relationship with you. They just have to prioritize every relationship that they have. And so that we ask that you call if they have a call-in line. You could also send in mail. You could send an email to the counselor just checking in with the mentee. Any real creative way that you can think of, just letting them know, I'm still here, I still want to talk to you, even if we're not getting phone calls. So if you're not hearing from them, please don't take that as a lack of interest on their part. Scheduling a video call would be a great way to figure out where they stand and what they're interested in with you as far as building a relationship. Some other things we were kind of thinking through as far as like building that relationship while we're virtual, what that would look like, especially if they're not calling you. There's some other options for connecting with them. So we obviously have virtual visits, but you could also reach out to them through a postal mail. If you wanted to mail them letters, that is something that you're able to do. The biggest piece of that would be not putting their information on the envelope. You'd have to put the counselors. But you could always send, a short video to the counselor of your face, just saying, hey, like, I hope you're doing well. I'm thinking of you this week. And maybe show them your pet if you want to. That's something you're able to do. And then you could send a small care package if you wanted to, if there's something that youth likes, if they really like, I don't know, panda bears or something, and you wanted to send like a small stuffed animal, or if you wanted to send their favorite candy or something like that, I think that would be okay. If you ever had questions about what to put in a care package, you could definitely ask your mentor liaison and the counselor. Some of our campuses have a call-in line. I know Dogwood has one, so that might be a great opportunity to reach them that way and make sure that they're okay. If you do not have the number to the cottage, please let your mentor liaison know. We'd love to connect you that way as well. But yeah, letters have been a really great method, I think, and so have emails for a lot of our kids. And I think it's something that they've looked forward to. I know in a recent video call, the youth was like, I mailed you guys a letter, and the mentor was like, you mailed me a letter? I haven't gotten a letter. And she went to check her mail and came back, and the letter had come that day. And so she got to open her letter that the kid actually sent and read it. And that was really sweet. So I think that's something that you guys get to do. And I think the reason the kid was inspired to send the letter is because the mentor had sent one to her. So if you have any questions about that, we'd love to do that. Okay, so as far as how you guys stay connected, have you guys found a method of communication that works best with you and your mentee? Is it, the mail? Is it email? Do you call the cottage line? Please let us know in the chat box. We'd love to hear your feedback, as I'm sure there's mentors on this video call that are trying to figure out what's the best method for them.
I find that I can't control their phone calls and how much they choose to call me, right? However, I can control the amount of video chats and letters I send, and also now visits too. So I always try to do at least one video chat and at least one postcard per month. And in those postcards, I always try to send photos too, even if it's like, it does not have to be fancy. I will just send photos of like puzzles I've been doing, walks outside. Even that gives some like sense of normalcy. Anne sounded off in the chat and let us know that she does send letters sometimes, which I know her kid loves. So.
And they get to keep the letters in their stuff, like in their little folders. And I think that's really important because it's not just like a one-time thing. They get to go back and look at it and reread it. And I think that's especially important on days that are harder, to have that encouragement in their back pocket. I know I've been in a match once and the kid just brought their folder of photos and she just showed every photo that she had of the important people in her life or important memories that she has. I know I also had another mentee who specifically asked for photos of her and the mentor together so that she could print them off and keep them in her stuff. So if you guys have any of those, I think that would be really fun to share too, because that's like their thing that they get to have on them in their cottages.
My child keeps all of our photos on his bedroom wall, so.
And every time I do a video call with Lydia and her mentee, he's always asking to see the puppies every single time. So whether or not she was planning on sharing her dogs doesn't matter because he wants to see them, which I think is fun because he otherwise maybe wouldn't have had the opportunity to meet them. Okay. So activity ideas. We are going to discuss some creative ways to help with engagement. And if you guys have any ideas, we would love to hear your feedback of what's worked. Because I think every kid has their own individual interest, and so maybe yours has a really specific interest that isn't shared with all of our kids, and if you've come up with a creative way to engage with them, please let us know. So writing activities. A lot of our kids practice journaling through therapy. When they're going through their trauma narratives, that is something that is either written or typed out, and so they have a lot of practice with this. And I know some of our kids even ask for journals from the mentors. So maybe you also like to journal or you are a writer yourself. And if that's the case, that might be a great opportunity for you guys to connect over that. I think it's also important when thinking through writing activities, you can maybe even set like a goal of something that you guys want to consider every day. I know gratitude is a big one. So maybe you guys want to think through what's the best thing that happened today. And that way they have a written like memory that you guys can revisit when you have your virtual visit. It also, I think, creates some intentionality for both the mentor and the mentee. I know for myself to consider what was good that happened today. So you could share these prompts. You can maybe think of things that you both want to be more mindful of. Maybe that's communication and how you say your words or how you communicate your needs, but being mindful of, ways that you can communicate together. So discussing those interests or answers during a virtual visit would be something that would create purpose, I think, during your calls too, which would be good. So providing those writing prompts could be like, what is your greatest dream, or what is your favorite time of the year? But again, getting to something specific together, something that might be a little bit harder to get specific with when meeting. I think during a virtual call, you might get I don't know, to some of these answers or to some of these questions, excuse me. And so giving them that time to think about what is my favorite thing or what is, something that I really value. And then you guys could share what you both value. And that might be a really great learning opportunity for both of you. They might learn something from you and you might learn something from them. And then the would you rather questions, I think, are always fun. So would you rather, we recently had a mentor do this, and the question that I remember was, would you rather have binoculars for eyes or a microscope for eyes? And the kid gave a really insightful answer that she would rather have binoculars for eyes because she doesn't want to see the germs on her hands. And I agree with her on that. I wouldn't either. And so again, it just created a really fun conversation of, what would you rather do and why do you feel this way? And you also learn something about them. So those are kind of the easier writing activities. You can also always like Google writing activities, or maybe you have your own journal at home that offers prompts. So maybe sharing those prompts with your mentee would be a good idea as a way for you guys to be really thoughtful with your conversations. We also have had a mentor who shared a book with her mentee. So there were 2 copies. She had a book, and then the mentor had a book, and they read a chapter. And every time they got together, they would review the chapter that they read. And I think that this was really helpful because they were actually a mentor and mentee that were matched during virtual only when we didn't have in-person visits. And so they were really trying to be mindful of how they got to know one another and creating that and building that relationship. So maybe there is a book that you are both interested in reading that you could go through together. The biggest thing with that is that it would have to be age appropriate. Lydia mentioned earlier today that there was a website called goodreads.com, and it kind of rates books based on level of appropriateness. So if there is maybe a childhood favorite of your own that you would like to read, I was a big Harry Potter fan when I was growing up, and maybe that is something you guys could explore together, depending on your child's age and reading level. So that might be something fun to learn about together. And honestly, some of our kids read a lot on their own anyway, and they might have a book that they want to suggest for you to read. And so you guys could do that together. Or maybe your kid likes to make up their own stories. So you guys could start a story through email or the postal mail. So you would put the first, like the beginning lines in that would be your piece, and then you would send that to the counselor, and the kid would finish the story with their own piece, and you guys would see how the story would come together. And that might be a fun way, kind of almost like Mad Libs, to see what the other person created with the story that you started. And then you could also send a letter with pictures of family or pets, anything like that, with just kind of some kind of writing for them to read, you know, maybe a little life update of your own and a little check-in to see how things are going on their end. We had a mentor send letters. She sends these through email, and they're really cute and sweet. So she sent pictures of her dog, and you know, this was, I think, right after a visit that they'd had together, and she told a little story and history about her dog, and then reviewed their time together. So, you know, she loves this. She said, you seem to always have joy in your voice, and I love it. And then asked a question to end it. So she, you know, gave her a little update about her dog, and then offered some encouragement to the mentee, and then ended the letter with a question, just so that they have something to talk about the next time they see each other. And then they're also learning Spanish. So she sent in a translation and then how you pronounce it, which I think is really cool and intentional. And then the other one was just a quick little note of encouragement with a pun, which is always fun and I think really appreciated. So I'm going to leave these up for a moment so that you guys can read them, just to kind of get some ideas going.
I would love for you all to sound off too in the chat with what you've included in letters. Just because I think sometimes we get in our own heads about like, I have to be doing something to send a letter, when really you could just send something punny. So let us know what you've sent in some letters.
Okay. Yeah, please let us know if you guys have found a good way of communicating in your letters that seems to work for your video calls as well. I know we've talked about pets a lot. If you don't have a pet, maybe you have something like a virtual show and tell that you could do. I was thinking you could, I don't know, if you've been on like a really fun trip somewhere, like maybe you got to go to Disney World, or you went on a really great hike and you took photos. It might be a good opportunity to show those photos or whatever objects you have in your house with a story to your mentee. I think any way that you can find, just to open the horizons of our kids so that they know that there's other experiences out there. You know, if you ever wanted to go somewhere, maybe you put that on your list of goals. Like if there's something that interests you, maybe you've been to somewhere with different kinds of food, I don't know, maybe you've been to New Orleans and you should take them to Mardi Gras, and not like the restaurant in Memphis, I'm sorry, not Mardi Gras the party, but if you wanted to, have them see what New Orleans looked like and then ask, like, would you like to experience this on a pass one day? Or these are the kind of foods that they have in this area of, the United States. But just kind of thinking through, like, what are some experiences of your own that you could maybe introduce them to. So if there's anything in your home that's like a memorabilia or something of that nature, that might be a good opportunity to share that story with them. And if your surroundings are appropriate, we would love for you to maybe show them the room that you're in on the video call. They honestly might ask you exactly where you are in your home anyway, and ask to see the room itself. And as long as it's, appropriate and you're prepared to show your house around or show your room around, that is certainly okay. But again, just being mindful of what's around you and who's around you. And also, I would say maybe don't give them an entire house tour. I don't know if they need to know the exact layout of your house, but if the current room that you're in or your current surroundings are available to be seen, then that is certainly an option. Some other no prep activities. So you guys could always do an exercise challenge. If you're interested in seeing who can hold the plank the longest, go for it. I personally don't think that's something I would want to do because I would lose, but if that is something that's fun for you guys, that would be a really great opportunity. And just making sure that I guess one of you is counting and you're both able to see one another on the camera. That might be something you'd have to figure out, but you could also do any kind of games. So you could compete against each other with rock, paper, scissors. If you have a sheet of paper, you could do hangman or tic-tac-toe or any other virtual easy game that you can think of, but that is always easy if competing is something you enjoy doing. And if you have any ideas of what that might look like for you and your mentee, I definitely would encourage you to do that. Also, TikTok dances are like all the rage right now. So if you have great rhythm and your mentee is interested in learning a new dance, that is something you guys could do as long as the music is appropriate and the movements are appropriate as well. And if you don't want to do that, you could still maybe have a little dance party and maybe play some music for both of you to enjoy. Or maybe you have like a new favorite song that you want to share with them. That could be something worth looking at as well. You guys could maybe play Two Truths and a Lie during your next video chat. I recently played this with one of our youth and I hesitated before I gave my lie and she immediately called me out. So if you are going to play that, be more prepared than I am. And then that also might be a good way to start getting to know one another. That's actually why we ended up playing it, is because we were trying to think of an icebreaker because it was a new relationship. What would be the best way to do that? And so you get to share a little bit about yourself and you can kind of choose what that is and based on what you're interested in having that person know about you. So that child might not want to share anything especially personal, and so this might be a good way of just kind of getting to know one another. And then I know we talked about 20 questions. I actually play this game sometimes when I need just like a little break from thinking too hard, or if my brain just needs a little bit of a rest, I'll play 20 questions with animals, and just to kind of do something that feels a little relaxing or like a no-brainer, I guess. And so that's generally pretty easy. You don't have to do animals. You can pick any category you want. If you wanted to do Disney characters or Pokemon or anything like that, that is something I think would be fun and easy and you don't have to do any kind of preparation for. And then there's also a memory game. So this specific one goes in alphabetical order. So the first statement is, I'm going on a beach trip and I'm taking an apple. So apple starts with an A. So the next thing will start with a B. So it'd be, I'm going on a beach trip and I'm taking an apple and a balloon. And you'll continue out through the alphabet until you get to Z. And you have to try and memorize all the words that each of you have said, and whoever gets it wrong loses. And then there's the alphabet scavenger hunt. I remember playing this game on road trips, looking for signs on the road that had started with the letter A and then B all the way to Z. And maybe that's something you guys can do in the room that you're in. I think it definitely depends on the room that the youth is in. There might not be a lot of access to the alphabet or objects, but it's definitely something that you guys could talk about and think about together. And maybe you guys just do that in the room that you're in. Maybe you don't use the room that they're in, but yeah, that might be something worth trying. That's probably a lot easier to do in a house than it is a car. Okay, and then prep needed activities. So these are activities that you guys can kind of figure out what you want to do together. So you can ask them, you know, are you interested in learning origami? And some of our kids actually already know origami. I think there's a few that have learned origami in school or through their staff. But you guys can maybe learn this together, or they could teach you. But you can make little animals together, and so if that is something you want to do, we will just have to let the counselor know ahead of time so that they have the paper for it. But I know I've had kids give me little origami animals, so they're definitely cute. Some other prep needed activities, you can do a craft. The important thing is just making sure that this craft is something that you can do within 30 minutes and that there aren't any objects that would maybe be harmful or dangerous, and that's something you can ask the counselor about. Some you might not need to, but if there's multiple pieces to it, we might need to just check in and make sure it's okay for the environment that they're in. So I know Lydia actually gave her mentee a wooden shark to use little paint markers on, and they were the washable paint markers. So that way if he got it on himself, it wouldn't ruin his clothes, and it wasn't a big cleanup for our staff. He actually ended up doing that with me on the call. I was facilitating the call, and it was a lot of fun because I got to do it together. So if you go to Michael's or Hobby Lobby or any other store, this might be something worth looking into. But you'll get one set for one craft kit for you, and then one craft kit for the youth, and you can either drop it off at the building, or you and your mentor liaison can facilitate getting that craft to them a different method if needed. But I think that's a really great way for you guys just to stay engaged with each other and also give them something to do, and maybe something they wouldn't have the opportunity to do at least immediately at whatever location they're at. So it'll just be like a fun special memory for you guys of this thing that you created, and they'll get to keep it in their room or with their stuff. So that I think would be a lot of fun. And then the other thing is Play-Doh. Play-Doh Pictionary. I've never played this, but it sounds like a lot of fun, where you roll out a creature or an item, and the other person has to guess what it is. So as you can see, there's some examples over here of a house. I think I'd make a really good snake. And then can you picture it? So I think this is where one person draws something on a notebook, and they don't show the other person, and instead they instruct the other person on how to make the thing that they drew. So if you drew a flower, you would tell them, I drew a circle in the middle of my sheet of paper, and then I put half ovals all around the circle. And I think this is a really good way to practice following instructions, especially for our kids who might find that a little bit challenging at times. So it'll also give them practice on giving instructions. So hopefully it reinforces the idea that instructions are helpful for both you and the person receiving the instructions. Okay, there is a website called Art for Kids Hub, and it's a great resource for videos of drawings. So you'll see somebody draw something and instructing you on how to draw that item. So it could be a Minecraft character, it could be a taco in this case. But that way you guys can do it together and then see how it turns out in the end. I know I'm not very good at drawing, so this would probably be a good opportunity for me to actually draw something. I know a lot of our kids like to draw things, and I'm always like, I have no idea what to draw. So this way, at least I could keep up with them. And then there is NASA. So NASA provides free educational activities. There's like ways of like building fun things. So in this case, like a paper helicopter, soda straw rockets. There's also poetry. So there's like a long list of things that you guys could do together. And I think it would be a good idea maybe for in one visit to look at the website. You can maybe share your screen during the virtual call, and you guys can pick out something to do together. So in the next call, you will have all the items together and given to them, and you guys will get to come together and learn how to make something new. And then there's FunBrain. It's an educational website that has a lot of videos. From what I remember, I know I watched these when I was a kid, and there was like videos on every topic in every subject during school. So if you wanted to watch history videos, it'll go over like a quick little snippet of this event in history. I remember a lot of science videos that covered all different kinds of sciences. And so that's something maybe interesting for you guys, but it also includes like doodle pages and dots to dots. And all that, and that way you can also figure out what does the person you're with like to learn about. I really enjoyed history when I was a kid, and so I probably would have enjoyed learning that, but for some people history is really uninteresting. So you guys can figure out what is it that you're interested in doing together, and it'll also give you maybe a good idea of what you guys could do in the future when passes are an option. So getting to know their interest, I think would be definitely helpful. Okay, so you could create your own forehead game like headbands or heads up. So traditionally headbands or heads up, you have the phone on your forehead, and the other person has to help you guess what that thing is. Obviously, if this is a virtual call, you won't be able to share a phone. So the other person could maybe think of something, and you would ask questions to see what that thing is. You could also play charades that way. So if you wanted to pick a topic and act out what mowing the lawn would look like, and then they would have to guess that you're mowing the lawn. And then you guys could also visit maybe like one of the skills that they wanted to learn. So during the mentor matches, we ask, you know, what is an activity that you would like to learn or try to do? And sometimes it's something like playing a guitar or learning how to speak a new language or something like that. In this case, you could maybe look at crocheting or creating a certain kind of craft. I think crocheting would be a really good idea because it is also a coping skill and therapeutic and something that they're able to do outside of video calls. So if you guys learn together and they needed to be regulated afterwards, crocheting would be an option for them. So that could be a good idea. And then host a taste testing call. So the important thing with this is that most of our campuses, I'm sorry, not most, some of our campuses are not allowing our youth to have food with them at this time, as far as like somebody bringing food on campus. So the food would definitely need to be pre-packaged. It would need to be like a snack bag or something like that. And you could maybe find snacks that they've never tried before. So I know during peak quarantine, I went to the international market over on Germantown Parkway in Cordova a lot, just to walk the aisles to see something new, as my only method of like entertaining me at that point. So if there's maybe some fun, cool snacks that you guys could find there and they could try it for the first time, that could be a really good idea. I recently had a youth who told me that her teacher gave her Russian chocolate for the first time, and it was very important for her, or for me, to know that it was Russian, because it was something that was new for her and new for me. I've never had Russian chocolate, so I don't know what that's like. But that's interesting and something fun to do, but just know that it does need to be prepackaged. So maybe there's something you already know of that they haven't tried. That might be something worth looking into. Okay, website activities. So you guys can play online Jeopardy together, or you could think of questions to ask beforehand that they would maybe have to know the answer to get points. The biggest piece with this is just making sure it's questions that they would potentially know the answer to. So some of our kids maybe won't know the answer to, I don't know, who won the Super Bowl last year, but they might know the answer to the capital of states or something like that. So just keeping that in mind. And if they don't know the answer, it's a great opportunity to teach them something new. And then you guys could look at Sudoku puzzles. There's a website online, and you could share your screen with them, and you guys could figure out where the numbers go in the boxes on Sudoku. And then you could also utilize Duolingo. They have flashcards, and you could practice phrases, and that might be something worth doing. I know I've had kids say before that they really want to learn Spanish. So that might be something worth considering, and something if you don't know how to speak a second language, it might be good practice for you as well. You could also learn ASL. I think there's videos on YouTube, and that could be something that I think could be really helpful as well. Okay. There's also Quizlet. It has science, arts, and humanities. It has all the subjects. I've used this a lot in school. So you could look through flashcards and games, and you can also find, again, like specifics under these subjects. So if this child is specifically interested in, I don't know, World War II, you could look up topics under that within Quizlet, and you guys could learn something new together. And they might also already know some of that information, which I think would be fun for them to practice. You could also test your knowledge with Trivia Maker. It has hundreds of pre-made games, and you can also make your own of just like questions and answers. And then Highlights. I don't know if any of you remember the Highlights magazine for kids, but they had those spot the items activities, and so you can actually do those online, which I might do on my own. Those were always a lot of fun, so you guys could look into doing that on Highlights, but you could also just look up a specific topic on Highlights, and it'll pull all these different things that you guys could interact with and look at. And they also have printable coloring sheets, so if you wanted to send that in an email to one of the counselors, that could be a great opportunity for you guys to just have that on hand if that's something you are wanting to do or maybe need to do during your call. This has also been a really great piece of working through COVID. You could do virtual visits. I know I needed to get out of the house over the last year, and so you could look into maybe visiting a zoo through their live cameras. The Memphis Zoo actually has one, and maybe you guys could go and visit your favorite animal or the youth's favorite animal, and just kind of look around and see what's going on. You could also do the National Museum of National History, and looking through, the current or the events that have occurred throughout U.S. history. And I think there's also the Natural History Museum if you wanted to see the skeleton of a dinosaur or look through the history of the Jurassic era. Like, that's something you guys could do together. And I definitely know we have kids who are big fans of dinosaurs. So that could be a lot of fun and something they maybe don't have the opportunity to do otherwise. And the same goes with visiting Walt Disney World, Universal, or Disneyland. You can visit that virtually. And some of our kids they've probably all heard of Walt Disney World, but they've maybe never gotten to see it. And so this could be a good idea for you guys to just kind of explore the park and explore what's going on. They also have the fireworks shows and parades that you can watch. And you can also ride virtual rides. I know Soarin' is a really fun ride, so I think you can actually ride the majority of these rides at these parks virtually. And if you can't do it on like the Walt Disney website, you can certainly YouTube them and ride them that way. As far as some other virtual activities you guys could do, you could visit the Grand Canyon, Yellowstone, or watch the Northern Lights. I think I didn't realize growing up here in Memphis just how different the landscape of America was. I guess I knew, but seeing it in person, I just was like, oh, I didn't even know the extent, I guess. And so this might be a good opportunity for them just to see other parts of the country and what those areas look like, and maybe going through like the history of like how the Grand Canyon was formed and things like that. So going back to the story writing, you could also make your own comic book. So you could make up a story for a superhero and become that superhero, and you would also get to make your own art together, which would be really cool. I know some of our kids are really big Marvel fans, and so this might be a fun way to turn those stories into their own kind of stories. I definitely have had kids talk to me in length about Marvel and about the superheroes, so this might be something that's right up your alley too, and that might be fun to explore together. And I also think it would be really helpful in teaching them collaboration and working with others, and how to do that, because they'll be doing that for the rest of their life. And then there's also Storyline Online, so it's really famous actors reading children's books. I've never thought I needed Oprah Winfrey to read me a children's book, but she might need to now. I didn't even know this was an option until recently. So that might be fun for both of you, depending on who you enjoy watching. Again, going back to Marvel superheroes, maybe one of the actors is reading one of these stories, and that could be really fun for them to maybe see. Okay, so what has been your favorite activity, either planned or one that doesn't take any preparation, but what have you found has worked for you guys? I'm sure there's been some times that you've had to just come up with something on the fly, and if so, we'd love to hear about that. So please let us know in the chat box.
Yeah, so we have one mentor, and she does book clubs. So in between visits, she does book clubs, and she actually drew her mentor a picture of a constellation that was referenced in a book that they had read, and then gave her background on it, which I think is incredible. And then, of course, facilitating video chats. Kids love going to virtual zoos just because that's not something that is an option right now, or even aquariums. Almost everyone has switched to some option of live video chat, so great option. And then Sierra loves Art for Kids Hub, which is also a YouTube channel, and it's just really great to do during video chats as well. I think those have been like really popular. We would love to hear more of your creative ideas for video chats, because I know this is where we struggle. I struggle.
I know we played Would You Rather on one of my video chats that I facilitated, and the 20 questions game, and that was a lot of fun, because you got to go back and forth with who was like leading, and I think the kids enjoy that. I think they like getting to lead the conversation sometimes too.
and also did a virtual tour of an Egyptian section of a museum based on another book they read. Her kid's a real bookworm, so, but that's smart to incorporate other things with it.
That is smart. Okay. Mentee feedback. So I definitely think, as we've been working through virtual video calls, kids have kind of figured out what works better for them and what they would like mentors to know. So they definitely think having some kind of activity planned or something hands-on is helpful for them. I think, again, it kind of goes back to keeping focus and maintaining conversation. And I think it also kind of takes the edge off of trying to continue a conversation when maybe they're not well practiced in conversing with adults. So I think having those activities on hand definitely makes it a little more relaxed for them. And they also like to compete against you guys. I'm sure it's because they like bragging rights that they beat you at something, which is totally fair. I certainly understand that. But that might be something to think through too. So if you're needing help in thinking through activities and what might be fun, you can always ask them, what's something you want to do during a video call. And sometimes, they might want to do some kind of fun game. They might want to play charades with you, but they also might tell you that they're fine with just talking. And so getting their feedback, I think, is really important, especially if you're kind of like, I don't know what to do next. I know for me, when I was planning passes with my mentee, there'd be times I'd be like, I'm running out of ideas. Like, I don't know what to do next. And so my mentees would always tell me what it is they like to do or what, something they would look forward to doing. And sometimes that was, just going to lunch, and other times it was going to a museum. So again, just asking for their feedback and asking for what's fun for them. And I think too, sometimes our kids appreciate being able to say, I can't give a full 30 minutes today. They want to be able to say, there's only this amount of time I'm able to give today. And that might just be because they've done 3 other video calls today, and this isn't the first of the day, and they're tired, or they've had a long day, or maybe there's been something going on that we're just unaware of. So if that's the case, just being mindful that it most likely has nothing to do with you, and it just has to do with how the day has gone, but letting them say no when they need to say no. And if that's something you're worried about, if you're worried about whether or not they're why they're maybe saying no, that's always something we can ask them about in our updates with them. When we meet with them at the end of every month, we ask, how are things going? Do you have any questions or concerns? And so if that's something specific you're wondering about, please let us know, and we'll be sure to get some feedback from them. Okay, and then as far as like their favorite activities, things that they've enjoyed doing, the 20 questions and the animal cams, I think, have been a lot of fun. Our kids really like animals for the most part, so if you're needing something on the fly, 20 questions is always a good go-to. And then they also liked the drawings. Some of our kids are really artistic and they enjoy drawing, so if that's the case, please explore Art for Kids Hub and see if there's anything that you guys could maybe do together, or any other crafts that you come across. If you run into something at the store that you think would be fun for each other to do, that could be a really good idea. And then they also like racing against you guys, so competition, again, I think, is a really big hit. So competing a puzzle and seeing who does it first, or doing the hidden objects on highlights is also something that you guys could race against. I know for me, my mentee and I used to do word search races. I would just get the word search books at dollar store, and he'd have one and I had the other, and we would race through to see who would get first, and he would beat me pretty regularly at that. Okay. So that completes this portion of our training. If you guys have any questions about anything, if there's something we didn't cover that you would like to know more about, please let us know. But I definitely hope that this has helped. in getting a better understanding of like how to go through and go about these video calls, because we will be continuing them even after COVID. I think this will be a regular part of our mentoring program. And so again, if you have any feedback, any questions, we would love to hear them. But thank you all for your time. I think Lydia is about to read through the chat box.
Yeah, so I think we had some great ideas, and I would love to hear more before we wrap up, because really this is how we get ideas. This is how we share them. Leslie got her mentee a travel Yahtzee game. So that way they can play Yahtzee together, and they each have score sheets and dice, which is a great idea because I know how competitive her kid was when we played Jeopardy this week. Very competitive. Also, would you rather questions. I know that I have pulled some like BuzzFeed quizzes of superhero or Disney when when our video chat got a little stale. I love the virtual museum. Hidden pictures. I haven't really utilized Quizlet, but I think that that's a really good idea. You do have to make sure though that your child is okay with quizzes. I know that mine, we tried to do it once and he felt like he was a little, like he wasn't smart enough, which you definitely want to discourage that reaction or discourage that behavior, because that's absolutely not the case. None of us are perfect.
And you guys did BuzzFeed quizzes, which depending on the topic, like that's a lot of fun. I enjoy BuzzFeed quizzes. So maybe they want to know which, Hogwarts house they belong in. Right. That could be fun.
And then dropping off a gingerbread house I thought was so sweet. Drop off one for the kid, drop off one for yourself, and then have them do it together. And of course, not just counselors, but also mentor liaisons are facilitating chats. So we can definitely manage that. I think I Spy, Sierra mentioned, was a good idea. Origami. My first kid loves origami. I still have his first butterfly that he made me, and I have framed it. So that's a really cute thing for you to keep. And then book clubs. Oh my gosh, so popular. Just make sure it's appropriate. And so again, continuing that conversation with other learning ideas, I think is a great idea. Continuing conversation in between video chats and visits. I think now, because we're able to do virtual, that is easier. So for example, sending an email, sending a card, doing a video chat between visits, those kinds of things is very nice, just to continue that line of communication. Other than that, of course, photos of every day. Mad Libs, there are so many Mad Libs for kids that you can fill in. And so like if you share your screen, you can do that. There's also the whiteboard feature on Teams, so you can play Hangman or tic-tac-toe or anything like that. Other than that, please let us know if you guys have any ideas. Sierra and Allison, do you have any great things to pitch in?
At my last visit, the kid introduced me to a game where it's like you just can't run out of words. Like the words don't have to match, but you just have to keep going, like word after word after word. So she'd be like apple and I'd be like tree, sky, and you just go back and forth. And that became really challenging the longer you did it. It was actually very hard. And the mentor and I were both like cracking up at the end of it because she was still going and we were like, I'm out of words. I don't know any other words. So that was an easy game that she introduced us to. We were basically just racing to come up with a different word every time. And it just goes faster and faster and faster until one of you trips up and can't think of words. You can't think of another word. So that was a fun one and that was easy. And we thought it was funny.
He brought up a good point and she was like, can we screen share from our end? So Zoom, you would have to switch over host control. However, on Teams, you don't have to, which is really a great feature of Teams. anybody can screen share. So that's a really nice feature of Teams.
Well, ladies, thank you so much, Allison and Lydia, for your guys' input. Lydia helping us moderate our chat box, and Allison for presenting a lot of great information. I'm really excited to try some of these, especially the Yahtzee thing. That's a great idea. I'm hoping to get matched with a new mentee soon, and maybe that's something that they would want to do. So I really appreciate the input that you guys gave. Just a reminder, this training has been recorded, so we will send this in our end of the month email that you'll get next week. So please be on the lookout. We'll also include that resource page with all the activities that Allison discussed with you guys today. But other than that, that's all that we have for today. Thank you guys so much for joining us, and I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend.